She did not shout, she did not beg, she did not threaten. She asked again and again and again. That was enough. Her name first appeared in records the same way most names do, brief. Unremarkable, typed neatly into a municipal ledger that recorded residence, employment, and status. She lived alone. She worked when work was available. She paid what was required. She followed posted rules. Nothing about her demanded attention, and because of that, nothing protected her. The system she lived under did not notice people who complied quietly. It noticed irregularity. It noticed disruption. It noticed those who slowed things down. For years, she existed without comment. Her name appeared on lists. Her address updated as expected. Her life moved forward in small, administrative increments. Then one day, it didn't. The first mark against her did not come from a court. It did not come from police. It came from routine. A routine inquiry. A routine inspection. A routine request for information. She responded. She asked a question. It was not an unreasonable question. It was not aggressive. She wanted to know why the request applied to her. She wanted to know which authority had issued it. She wanted confirmation in writing. This was noted, not answered, when the answer did not come. She followed up. She referenced the date. She referenced the request. She asked again. This follow-up was noted. It was the second notation by the third letter. Her name was no longer alone in the file. A descriptor appeared beside it. Persistent. The word carried weight. It was not neutral. It was not descriptive. It was interpretive. Persistence implied resistance. Resistance implied unwillingness. Unwillingness implied instability. No one explained this to her. She was never warned. She continued to ask. The requests became internal. Clerks discussed how to respond, not what to say. How much effort was appropriate. Effort suggested importance. Importance suggested obligation. Obligation was avoided, instead. Her correspondence was summarized, her questions reduced to bullet points, her tone described rather than quoted. She continues to seek clarification. She does not accept informal explanation. She insists on written confirmation. Each sentence framed behavior as defect. The issue was no longer the request. It was her refusal to stop requesting. A meeting was scheduled. She attended. She arrived on time. She brought copies. She referenced prior correspondence. She spoke calmly. She asked the same questions. What authority? What regulation? What outcome? The answers were vague. They were procedural. They referenced guidelines. They did not explain decisions. She asked for clarification. That moment changed everything. The request for clarification was recorded as fixation. Her insistence on process was framed as inability to adapt. Her calm tone was interpreted as emotional detachment. When she asked to review the notes taken during the meeting, the request was denied. Internal documents were not shared. She asked why. That question was recorded. The answer was not. From that point forward, the file stopped being neutral. Observations replaced facts. Language hardened. She was no longer persistent. She was uncooperative. She was non-compliant, not because she refused instructions, but because she refused silence. The system escalated quietly. No confrontation, no accusation. A review was initiated. She was not informed it was evaluative. She believed it was procedural. The people conducting it believed. Otherwise, their questions were standardized. Her answers were summarized. Her words were filtered. When she corrected a misinterpretation, the correction was noted as defensiveness. When she asked why certain conclusions were being drawn, it was recorded as lack of insight. There was no version of her participation that would have satisfied the process. The outcome had already begun to form. The recommendation was cautious. It did not accuse, it advised. Further observation recommended. Observation did not mean help. It meant monitoring, tracking, classifying. From that point on, every letter she wrote became evidence. Every question reinforced the conclusion. If she stopped writing, it would indicate acceptance. If she continued, it would indicate pathology. The system allowed no third option. She was advised informally to stop contacting offices. She asked for that advice in writing. None was provided. She continued to write. She wrote politely. She wrote clearly. She wrote carefully. Her care was interpreted as obsession. Eventually, a document was prepared. It did not mention her arguments. It did not quote her words. It summarized behavior. It declared concern. It framed intervention as protection. She was not present when it was signed. She was notified afterward. She responded. Immediately. She objected. She asked for appeal. She asked who to contact. Those objections were attached to the file. As confirmation, the system had reached its conclusion, and she had helped it do so. The document that authorized intervention did not accuse her of anything. It did not allege violence, it did not suggest danger, it did not describe a crime, it described concern. Concern is harder to contest. Concern does not require proof. Concern requires interpretation. The document cited patterns, repeated correspondence, difficulty accepting explanation, inability to disengage from process. None of these were denied. They did not need to be. They were framed as symptoms. Symptoms. Do not argue back. Once behavior is defined as symptomatic, intent becomes irrelevant. Her objections were acknowledged. They were also reinterpreted. Her request for appeal was recorded as further evidence of fixation. Her insistence on understanding the process was framed as inability to trust authority. Her calm tone was described as inappropriate affect. The language was careful. It avoided judgment. It relied on implication. The recommendation was not immediate confinement, it was evaluation. Evaluation sounded temporary. Evaluation sounded reasonable. Evaluation implied return. She believed this. The notice she received used neutral language. It did not specify duration, it did not explain criteria for release. It did not describe rights, it described logistics. A date, a time, a destination. She responded. She asked where she would be taken. She asked under what authority. She asked how long evaluation would last. She asked who would oversee review. No one answered those questions. The transport order was executed quietly. There were no restraints. There was no announcement. She was informed, not consulted. Her belongings were itemized. Her papers were examined. Her correspondence was separated. Some items were retained. Some were marked non-essential. She asked to keep her letters. She was told they would be returned later. They were not. The facility was described as care. Care was the word used repeatedly. Care implied benevolence. Care implied expertise. Care implied safety. The building itself did not contradict this. It was clean. It was orderly. It was quiet. Quiet was emphasized. Quiet was enforced. Upon arrival, she was registered. Her name was entered. Her age confirmed. Her status assigned. She was given an identifier. It was for efficiency. She asked what the identifier meant. The explanation was procedural. Identifiers ensured consistency. Consistency ensured quality. Quality ensured care. The explanation ended there. She was shown her room, it was shared. Privacy was minimal. Personal effects were limited. Rules were posted. Schedules were fixed. Silence was encouraged, not demanded. Encouraged. Encouragement did not require enforcement. Compliance was assumed. She followed the schedule. She attended assessments. She answered questions. She asked questions. The assessments were standardized. The questions were not designed to invite dialogue. They were designed to categorize response. When she asked for clarification, the request was noted. When she challenged an assumption, it was interpreted. Her participation was active. This was not seen as cooperation. It was seen as resistance. The reports used neutral language. She continues to seek explanation. She demonstrates difficulty accepting framework. She remains preoccupied with procedural legitimacy. Her words were not quoted. They were summarized. Summaries carry authority. Quotations invite interpretation. The facility operated on routine. Routine reduced variation. Variation required attention. Attention created risk. Risk was avoided. Letters were permitted, with conditions outgoing. Correspondence was reviewed. Incoming correspondence was filtered. She wrote frequently. She wrote clearly. She wrote politely. She addressed administrators. She addressed oversight bodies. She referenced statutes. She asked about timelines. She asked about criteria. She asked about review. Each letter was logged, not answered. Some were delayed. Some were returned. Some were retained. Internally, the absence of response did not deter her. She continued to write. Her writing became part of her record. She persists. She remains focused. She does not disengage. These phrases appeared repeatedly. They were copied between reports. Copied language becomes fact. Over time, the evaluation phase quietly ended. No notice was issued. No decision was communicated. Evaluation had become status. Status does not expire. She asked whether evaluation was complete. The question was noted. The answer was procedural. Her status remained unchanged. She asked what conditions would allow reassessment. The reply cited policy. Policy did not specify conditions. She asked for clarification. That request was documented. Her insistence on clarity was again described as rigidity. She was advised to focus on adjustment. Adjustment meant acceptance. Acceptance meant silence. She did not accept. She continued to ask. The staff began to rotate. New personnel read summaries. They did not read original correspondence. Summaries shaped perception. Perception shaped interaction. To new staff, she was already difficult, already fixated, already resistant. She sensed this. She adjusted her tone. She became even more careful, even more precise. This did not help. Precision was interpreted as obsession. Caution was interpreted as control. Her behavior could no longer be neutral. Every action confirmed expectation. Time passed. Days, weeks, months. The routine did not change. Meals, inspections, scheduled activities. Restricted movement. Limited. Privacy. Her participation was consistent. Her questions continued. Her requests were polite. Her persistence remained. The reports reflected this. She remains unchanged. Condition stable. Behavior persistent. Stable did not mean improved, it meant predictable. Predictable was sufficient. At some point, the facility stopped discussing her. Her case no longer required. Reviewed, there was nothing new to say. She was neither improving nor deteriorating. She was simply present. And present cases generate less urgency than new ones. Her letters continued. They were processed in batches. Their content was no longer summarized. Only frequency was noted. Her voice was reduced to a metric. Eventually, even frequency was no longer noted. The act of writing had been normalized. Normalized behaviors do not require attention. She asked for access to her file. The request was denied. Records were internal. She asked how inaccuracies could be corrected. The answer cited procedure did not allow correction by subject. She asked who could correct them. The question was recorded. The answer was not. The silence around her questions grew, not abruptly, gradually. This was not punishment, it was efficiency. The system had no incentive to respond. Responding would reopen questions. Questions create work. Work creates liability. Silence created stability. Her refusal to be silent had reached its limit. Not because she stopped, but because the system no longer needed to listen. By the end of the second year, her name appeared less frequently in reports. Her identifier replaced it. This reduced individuality. Individuality complicates classification. Classification simplifies management. She became manageable. The system was satisfied. She continued to ask, but her asking no longer mattered. Asterisk by the third year. Nothing about her case was urgent. Urgency had passed. Urgency requires uncertainty. Her case no longer contained any. The assessments no longer changed. The language stabilized. Condition unchanged. Behavior persistent. Status maintained. These phrases appeared repeatedly. They were copied forward. Copied language becomes final language. No one rewrote her story. They simply extended it. Her daily life remained controlled by routine wake times, meals, inspections, assigned activities, scheduled rest. She followed the structure. She did not disrupt it. She did not refuse participation. She did not isolate herself. Her compliance did not help her. Compliance confirmed NAGEABILITY required no further action. She continued to write. Less frequently now, not because she had fewer questions, but because fewer avenues remained. Most addresses she had once written to no longer existed. Departments had merged. Oversight bodies had been restructured. Some offices had closed entirely. She wrote anyway. Letters returned unopened. Others were received and filed. They were no longer summarized. They were stacked. Stacked letters do not speak. They occupy space. Space is managed. Eventually, a decision was made. Regarding space. Files across the facility were reviewed, not individually. Categorically, older cases, long-term residents, stable classifications. Redundancy was identified. Efficiency was prioritized. Multiple files were merged. Not because the cases were similar, but because they were inactive. Inactive meant resolved. Resolved meant no further attention required. Her file was consolidated. The consolidation was administrative. It required no approval beyond internal authority. It required no notification. It required no explanation. Her individual correspondence was no longer attached, only summaries survived. Summaries had already removed her voice. Now they removed her continuity. Her name appeared less frequently, sometimes, not at all. Her identifier was sufficient. Identifiers do not age. Identifiers do not change. Identifiers do not require narrative. At this point, even staff turnover no longer affected her. New personnel did not encounter her story. They encountered her status. Status does not invite curiosity. It instructs behavior. She was to be monitored. She was to be managed. She was to be left undisturbed. Her requests for review continued. They were logged automatically. No one responded. The absence of response became standard. Standards are not questioned. They are followed. Time passed, years accumulated quietly. No event marked transition. No record noted deterioration. No report noted improvement. Stability was assumed. Assumption is efficient. Her letters eventually stopped being stored individually. They were recorded as occurrences. 1 letter, 2 letters, multiple letters, no content description, no interpretation, just frequency. Then frequency stopped being recorded. Not because she stopped writing, because the act of writing no longer altered classification. Alteration was no longer possible. At some point, her correspondence ceased entirely, whether she stopped writing, or whether the materials stopped arriving. The record does not say. There is no notation. Absence was expected. Expected absence requires no explanation. Her presence in daily logs diminished, not intentionally, procedurally. Long-term residents generate fewer entries. They become part of the environment. Background routine. Eventually, even that diminished. Her identifier appeared only in census-style counts. Occupancy, numbers, population totals, resource allocation. She existed statistically, not individually. During an internal audit years later, an inconsistency was noted. A case number appeared without corresponding resolution documentation. The intake date matched hers. The classification matched, but the exit documentation was missing. No discharge, no transfer, no death certificate. The discrepancy was flagged briefly. A marginal note was added. File consolidated. That notation resolved the issue administratively. It did not explain anything. Explanation was not required. The system had balanced staff. Noticed some asked questions, quietly. Those questions were not pursued. They did not align with priorities. Pursuing them would require reopening closed structures. Closed structures resist reopening. The explanation offered was clerical. Records were old. Systems had changed. Errors occurred. That explanation was accepted. Acceptance restores order. Order is valued. Her name appeared one final time in a ledger. There was no date, no context, no annotation. The surrounding pages were worn, handled frequently, referred to often. After that, there was nothing. No mention, no reference. No continuation. Her case did not end. It dissolved. This is how disappearance occurs within systems, not suddenly, not violently, gradually, through omission, through consolidation, through routine. She did not vanish. She was absorbed. The system did not destroy her record. It simplified it. Simplification removes detail. Detail preserves humanity. Without detail, a person becomes manageable. Manageable cases do not require witnesses. They do not require testimony. They do not require memory. They require maintenance. At some point, even maintenance ended. There was nothing left to maintain. Her refusal to be silent had been neutralized, not by force, by time, by procedure, by repetition, by the gradual withdrawal of acknowledgement. She had not been proven wrong. She had simply been outlasted. No announcement marked the end. There was no final decision, no concluding document, no summary explaining what had happened. The system did not declare her case finished. It simply stopped referring to it in administrative structures. This is resolution. A problem is considered resolved when it no longer requires attention. Not when it is answered. Not when it is corrected. Only when it becomes quiet. Her silence was not recorded. It was assumed. Systems assume silence. Easily. Silence simplifies management. Silence confirms stability. Silence requires no justification. Whatever remained of her life continued outside the record, and what exists outside the record does not officially exist at all. There were no witnesses, there was no testimony, there was no public reckoning, no inquiry ever asked whether she had been right, no review questioned whether her questions had been reasonable. The system had moved on. That movement itself was treated as validation. Years later, when historians examined similar institutions, they found patterns, long-term cases, incomplete records, consolidated files. Missing conclusions. None of these were treated as anomalies. They were expected artifacts of scale. Large systems produce loss. Loss is tolerated when it is distributed. No single disappearance appears alarming. Only totals matter. Her case did not stand out. It blended. That was the final success of the process. She did not become an example. She became data. Even that data was eventually reduced. When records were digitized decades later, summaries replaced originals. Marginal notes were omitted, handwritten. Annotations were lost. Her name survived only where it had been typed cleanly. Early entries, initial intake, basic registration. Nothing beyond that. Her correspondence did not survive digitization. There was no place for it. It did not fit predefined fields. The system accepted only what it could categorize. Everything else disappeared. This is how refusal is. Erased not by disproving it, by outlasting it. The effort she exerted was never acknowledged as effort. It was framed as disorder. Her consistency was framed as rigidity. Her calm was framed as detachment. Her questions were framed as symptoms. At no point did the system consider that she might have been correct. Correctness was irrelevant. What mattered was compliance. Compliance is quiet. Compliance leaves no trace. She refused silence, but the system was patient. It did not need to convince her. It did not need to respond. It only needed to wait. Waiting is something institutions do well. They outlast individuals. They persist beyond memory. They normalize outcomes. When silence finally arrived, no one recorded it, because nothing had changed. From the system's perspective, everything had worked. No disturbance occurred. No public issue arose. No liability followed. The process justified itself through continuity. Continuity was mistaken for correctness. This is not an exceptional story. That is the most unsettling part. There were others. Many others, they asked fewer questions or asked them differently, or stopped sooner. Their files look cleaner. Their disappearances are harder to notice. Her refusal left marks. Those marks are faint, but they exist. In repetition, in the language used to contain her, in the effort required to classify her as manageable. She was not erased because she was dangerous. She was erased because she was inconvenient, because she slowed things down, because she required answers, because she refused to accept explanation without justification. Systems built on authority cannot tolerate that indefinitely. Eventually, authority asserts itself not through force, but through indifference. Indifference does not feel like violence. That is why it works. History often records dramatic failure. It records collapse. It records scandal. It rarely records success of this kind, the success of silence, the success of routine, the success of allowing time to do the work. Her story survives only because fragments escape deletion. A ledger entry, a marginal note, a repeated descriptor, enough to suggest resistance, not enough to reconstruct a voice. That absence is intentional. Not because someone planned it, but because the system was designed that way. She did not lose because she was wrong. She lost because she was alone, and because the structure she challenged did not need to answer her. It only needed her to stop. Eventually, she did, or the system stopped listening. The record does not distinguish between the two, and that is the final erasure. She was not remembered as someone who refused silence. She was remembered, if at all, as a case that no longer required attention. That is how silence wins. No witnesses were required. No testimony was preserved. No conclusion was reached. Only continuity. Only routine. Only the quiet confidence of a system that mistakes endurance for justice. This is why stories like this matter. Not because they are rare, but because they are common. They reveal how easily a voice can be reduced to noise, how quickly noise can be categorized, and how efficiently categorization can replace accountability. She refused silence. The system responded by ensuring that, eventually, silence was all that remained. Unwitnessed, ed. Asterisk.